Doc Emrick joins me now in the Center for Media Innovation. Doc, thank you for so much for sitting down with
Oh,
me.
thank you. It's fun to see the traffic go by, isn't
No wrecks yet, fingers crossed.
it? Okay, good.
All right, so my first question. If you could go back and give yourself any piece of advice to teenage Doc, what would it be?
I guess not get discouraged and not be so critical of myself. I think that's one of the things that all of us do when we want to be perfect at a job, whether it's broadcasting or whatever it is that we tend to be hard on ourselves. And it's there's a reason why no one is perfect at their work. There's a reason why a really good batting average is 325. That means that 675 you were terrible, but 325 you were really good. Maybe you'll be in the Hall of Fame with that someday, or 350. I don't know, but yeah, I guess I always wanted to be perfect at what I did, but it's not realistic. And so that would be what I would probably kick myself in the backside about, even as a teenager, because I felt like if I worked hard enough, I could just be perfect at this, but it's not possible.
And now that you've been broadcasting for 45 plus years, what's the best piece of advice you have ever been given that you still carry with you?
Be yourself. There was a guy that broadcast a number of years in Fort Wayne, Indiana, that I grew up listening to. His name was Bob Chase. He still worked at age 90, which gives all of us old characters hope. He passed away just a year and a half ago. But that was the one piece of advice he gave me: be yourself. I think in the early years, too, you tend to want to be so accurate, and not perfect necessarily, but just accurate with what you do, that you become clinical, and then you lose personality with that because you're trying to be so surgical with what you do that you can't really have any kind of feeling to it. And so hopefully that's one thing that I've left behind as the years have gone on. It took me a number of years to finally realize that, though, but I think that's probably one thing that I've learned myself. I grew up listening to Bob Prince, who was anything but clinical and anything but surgical when he called the Pirates games long before your parents were born, let alone yourself. But he made me a Pirates fan years ago because he was a character, and he was different than the others. And I think going up and down the radio dial, that's what I appreciated about him, and that's what I appreciate about other announcers that I've listened to through the years, that they were not surgical and clinical, they were just human beings.
Are you still a Pirates fan now?
Hard as it might be, I sure am. Down the home stretch, they were difficult to watch. But in particular, the last weekend, I rejoined them because I wanted to see the tribute to Steve Blass. There again is another personality, another human being who was associated with the team all those years and with the winning teams all those years, but also carried us through some real miserable times in the recent quarter century, and did so with a smile on his face, and he made us laugh despite the times that weren't so good. And so I wanted to see how his last days here were saluted, and I was very happy with what they did.
He's a fantastic guy.
Yeah, he
Even
is.
though his speech got cut short by the rain, though.
Yes.
But he's a good guy. So when you come to speak, and it's been the same the past 2 times you've been to Point Park, you always give out your email.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important for kids our age to be able to get a hold of you?
Well, it's a part of sharing, I think, and there were people that did that for me long before the days of emails. There were people that were willing to listen to my work and tell me what they thought of it, even though, anyone that doesn't want to be corrected, but it's the only way you get better. And I think that's part of the reason that I do that. I want people to feel free and want to be touchable. You want people to think that they can walk up to you on a street corner and ask for a picture. There'll come a day, as there does with every human being that does this kind of work, where no one will do that anymore, and I'll miss that. And so I like to introduce people to this line of work if they're just getting started, and want them to find that it's fun and want them to see how they get better at it. I always encourage them to save the first one, because the first one, at least in my case, was just awful. But save it, because you'll laugh at it as the years go on, and you'll get so much better as you do more of them.
Now, when you were talking at the event, you mentioned for a few more seasons. Do you ever picture yourself retiring from this? And what's next after you do?
I don't know. Steve mentioned something. He had said something on one of his closing broadcasts, I think it may have been the radio broadcast, about the years work their way on, and he was talking about caring for his wife. And you realize as your years go on, one of these days, either she's going to be caring for me or I'm going to be caring for her, and we haven't reached that point yet. But when do you? And shouldn't you have some time before that happens to the both of you? And I don't know when that is. And so it becomes a difficult decision, and it does cross your mind now and then. It's not now, I know that, but I don't know when it'll be. Fortunately, I work for some people at NBC that about 7 years ago said, it's year to year, and it's up to you. And that doesn't happen in network television very often. So each year, Joyce and I go over it. The dogs usually don't care, as long as they get treats.
Of course.
But we usually go over it in a brief conversation, and the decision has been to go on for one more. One of these years it probably won't. I hope that I'm not one of those people who happens to pass away while on the job. I want to have some good time with her. But I don't know when it'll be, in answer to your question. I just don't know.
Fortunately for us, because we get to hear you call some more games.
Thank you.
Now, finally, I'll end with this on a happier note. You are one of the only people I know that loves dogs as much as I do.
They're good, aren't they?
What role have your dogs played in your life?
Well, for a number of years we weren't able to have them because we both were traveling so much in our work. She was customer service for the Philadelphia Flyers for 10 years. And when they fired me, they wanted to keep her because she was so good at what she did. But it was just not a fair situation for a dog to be in, because they'd be left at home all day, and I would be gone for 4 or 5 days. And so, but finally, when our lives stabilized, and we were able to resettle, and I worked for a network when they don't care where you live, we resettled back in Michigan, closer to both of our families. We started to get dogs, and we've had the usual sorrows that anyone has when they have dogs. But 98% of the time that you have them, they are a wonderful joy. They're God's creatures that are magnificent to have. And regardless of what kind of a day you have, when you get home, the dog doesn't care. And if it knew, it wouldn't care. And so you have great joy in your life. And we can't imagine having our lives without them.
I know there's a story about you having to leave the Olympics for one of them. Can you tell us that story?
Well, it was the first one. We had little Kate, and she was a Yorkshire Terrier. She was a little under 3. And around Christmas time, before the Olympics, she was diagnosed with kidney disease, and that tends to be terminal. We did get her to University of California, Davis, where they were experimenting with kidney transplants. It's very difficult in dogs, unlike in cats, where they can still try it. But she developed other complications, and we had to let her go, and it was a sad time. But it became clear in January when we got out there that there was some hope, and we had to let NBC know that you need to have an announcer that's calling these games that's not distracted. And it's not fair for Joyce to have to deal with that alone, and it's not fair to Kate to not have family there. Mm-hmm. So, and they were very good about it. Kenny Albert came in and did a wonderful job. And I missed doing the games, but I would have missed sorely not being with Kate. And I think that's one thing, too, that you can do for do for your pet at the end is to be there, because they've been there for you all this time, and that's a very hard time in all of our lives, but they need you there then.
So we are going to have one more question.
Okay.
Just throwing one extra in there
Yes.
so we can end on a happier note than that.
Yes.
What is the best advice you can give kind of generally throughout any major young adults our age, just to leave
Don't
us with?
quit. If you really want to do something and this is what you want to do, there's a lot of rejection in almost any walk of life, but particularly in this one, because I wanted to do this from the time I saw my first game in 1960, and I didn't get to do my first game professionally until 1973. And I didn't get to do my first NHL game until 20 years after I saw my first game. There were a lot of people that said no. And so I had to just keep believing in myself and continue to record games in the corner of arenas, and wanted to do it in the worst way. And that, I think, was probably the main advice I would give, is don't quit. If this is what you really want to do, keep going after it, because it's worth it. You get in free. You get a good seat for the game. You get to work with the best athletes in the world. And I later learned twice a month they send you something in the mail. It's not bad.
Doc, thank you so much for sitting down with me
Thank you,
and joining
Allison.
me here in the Center for Media Innovation.
Great fun, no accidents, and we even saw a dog.
Twice.
Yes, it's okay.
All right, thank you.